Hello. If you think of electric cars, you think of Elon Musk and Tesla. Think of electric powered bicycles and you think they're a new idea. Well, a few weeks back I went to the Caister Car Museum, which, as they say, is probably the largest and best privately owned motor collection open to the public in the UK. And there I found out about some of the earliest electric cars and motorised bicycles. So this talk is about the inventors and entrepreneurs whose revolutionary ideas were not successful and the reasons why they were not successful, although some years later those same ideas are heralded as revolutionary. I'll look at three inventions: the electric car, the powered bicycle, whether that by electric or something else, and another electric vehicle which is neither car nor bicycle, and one more idea which I think will never become popular: the weatherproof bicycle. So we all know about Elon Musk and his Tesla cars, fully electric, saving the planet, revolutionary. He's the archetypal entrepreneur. Well, not necessarily. In the very late 19th century, an electric car was developed by the City and Suburban Electric Carriage Company based in London. This company produced a fully electric two-seater car that was first sold in the very early 20th century. It could travel around 40 miles with a maximum speed of 20 miles per hour. At around the same time, the Americans were also making electric cars. The Columbia Motor Company built a few models, for example the Columbia Brougham in 1904. This one could seat 4 passengers and it sold for $3,500. It had twin electric motors at the back, and these gave the car a 40-mile travelling distance or range on one battery charge. So it all sounds pretty good, but they didn't succeed. They eventually died away, and the usual petrol-driven internal combustion engine came to be the main kind of car. And the reason for that is, there are 3 reasons. Firstly was the very high cost to buy these cars. Secondly was the very low top speed of the cars. And thirdly was the short range, which was mainly due to the rather heavy weight of the batteries when compared to even early 20th century vehicles which were powered by petrol in the internal combustion engine. So the second product is the electric bicycle. We see a growing number of these on the roads nowadays. They cost anything from about £1,500, and they allow the rider to maintain a speed of about 15 miles per hour without pedalling, which is useful if you don't like going up hills. But these are not a new idea. The idea of a bicycle that didn't need legs to power it actually first appeared in the 1950s, although it wasn't electric. It was a petrol motor which was fitted into the rear wheel of the bicycle. And this motorised wheel could fit onto any bike, so it was like an aftermarket product, produced by a company called Cycle Master. Now these have quite an interesting history. The original idea came from some German engineers at the end of the Second World War, and these engineers were prisoners of war, and they were sent to the Netherlands to work in a car import business. And one of the engineers had a blueprint for this motorised wheel, so it had never been built before. But when he took it to the Netherlands, the Dutch engineers used this blueprint to create a motor which sat actually at the front of the push bike, not within the wheel. But the blueprints were then sent to the UK, where a new company was formed to make the motorised wheel. The company used the German name on the blueprints, Radmeister, which translates as Cycle Master. And the motor allowed a bicycle to cruise at between 18 and 20 miles per hour. That's pretty good for a bicycle, with a fuel consumption at an impressive 300 miles for each gallon of fuel. A gallon, if you don't know, is about 3.8 litres. And that's pretty good when you consider a car is usually 35 to 50 miles per gallon. You can actually still find parts for these Cycle Master wheels on eBay. So this idea has been recreated recently with electric powered front bike wheels, which can be added as an aftermarket product to any bike for between about 160 to 400, 500 pounds. There's a picture on the screen now. But I'm not sure how popular these are actually. I don't think I've ever seen one on a bike, and I'm not sure I'd be confident in putting one on my bike. So that's the electric bike. The next product is kind of a electric thing, a vehicle. It was developed really before the world was ready to see it, and it's called the Sinclair C5. In 1985, a British entrepreneur called Sir Clive Sinclair unveiled this electrically powered pedal car, the C5, which the BBC described as a disastrous failure. When it was launched onto an unsuspecting public, it was supposed to be this new and futuristic form of transport, a non-polluting machine capable of taking the driver wherever they needed to go, locally at least, to the shops, to work, to the train station. And it would replace the oversized, under-efficient cars. It had a single seat with a small electric motor, which the rider or driver could also pedal. So it wasn't a car and it wasn't a bicycle and it wasn't really anything else. Sir Clive Sinclair described it simply as a vehicle. It had a battery that could provide an 18.7 mile or 30 kilometre range at about 15 miles per hour. And at that time, 1985, it cost £400. And the problem most people highlighted was the lack of safety. As you can see in the pictures, it's very low, so it's very difficult for car drivers to see it. And of course, it had no protection from the rain. And it flopped. It didn't sell hardly any. But perhaps the C5 was just 30 or 40 years too early. Maybe nowadays it would be successful. In fact, there are other vehicles which have taken the Sinclair C5 idea and modernised it. Sinclair's nephew has designed something called the Iris e-trike, which is similar to the C5 but with a more powerful electric motor and standard bicycle gears. The main advantage of this e-trike is that the rider is protected from the elements, so you don't get wet in the rain. Unfortunately, though, it costs £3,500. And that thing reminded me of something I saw at the Caister Car collection, similar to this Iris e-trike. It's an enclosed tricycle, so it has 3 wheels, and it was designed by P.J.H. Malloy in Stevenage near London in 1979. I think this thing on the picture is from 1979, but he designed it a few years earlier. It has no engine, it's just your legs that power it. And from the information card provided by Mr. Malloy, I've found out the following information. So he got the idea when he was riding his bike to work in the rain. He asked himself, could he create a cover for his bike, a bubble as he called it. But with bikes being quite high, the rider sits high on the bike. He realised it would be very dangerous in high winds. So throughout 1975, he worked on a design that fitted around a recumbent bike. A recumbent is a bike where the rider sits a little bit like you'd sit on an armchair with your feet up. If you see the picture, you'll see a recumbent bike. Mr. Malloy encountered quite a few problems with his idea, but finally in 1976 his product was ready, still not perfected, but good enough to be shown on TV and in the newspapers. Malloy reckons to have covered about 1,000 miles on his enclosed recumbent tricycle over the year 1977. Now, it might seem like a great idea to be enclosed from the wind and rain. But the problem, as I see it, is that when you're riding a bike, the wind actually keeps you cool. So being enclosed would make you very, very sweaty and uncomfortable. As many cyclists say, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing choices. So there we are, some old ideas that have been reborn for the modern day, and one idea from the 70s that never really made it big. But who knows, maybe in a few years there'll be another attempt to make an enclosed bicycle. And thank you to the Caister Car collection for a really interesting morning a few weeks ago. Thank you.